Hi, welcome back to More Bottle Than Talent with me, Ben Timmons, the racing driver with a chronic case of having more bottle than talent. It's episode number 4 where we're going to discuss race event number 6, which was at Knockhill. So the race at Knockhill was a double header, and what that means is we were racing on both Saturday and Sunday. So in the academy, we typically only race once per weekend. It's most of the other series that then race twice or sometimes even 3 times in the weekend. So this is our first venture into racing on multiple days. And it was really unique in the sense of on the Saturday, we were racing clockwise on the circuit, and on the Sunday we were racing anti-clockwise. Knockhill is based in Scotland, so it's not the most local track for 49 of the 50 academy drivers. Graham, who's based in Scotland, it was finally a local track for him. But for most of us, it meant a real long slog to get all the way there. Now, by sheer chance and good fortune, I was already in Scotland for this week. In fact, I was 25 minutes down the road from Knockhill because I was there on a family holiday playing golf, amongst other things. So I've never driven at Knockhill before. Again, where it's so far away, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense to go there for a track day. It's a huge investment in terms of time, cost, getting there, so on and so forth. But I've done a little bit of work on the simulator. In fact, in between the last race at Anglesey and this race at Knockhill, I actually bought my own simulator for use at home. I don't have a clue what to do with simulators, so my good friend and race coach Darren Burke guided me on what one to buy, and I bought one of another Caterham racer as well. And that's been a really useful tool for trying to learn the track, really, understand what is this, a left or right-handed corner, where should I be braking, all things that you can get a baseline for with the view to go and really tune it in the real world. Of course, simulators are exactly that, they are simulating real life, they are not exactly the same. So it was a great bit of learning to go there and have a rough idea of what I think I needed to do on track. Now, one thing that was really sad going into the weekend is our championship leader at the time, Matt Larby, wasn't able to race with us. Again, Matt and Tom, I've mentioned them regularly on the channel. He's a fantastic driver, again, super consistent, great to race with, so fair but hard at the same time in terms of how he races, and just a great person to be with at track. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to compete with us that weekend. A real shame. He, ultimately, of course, he needs to be there racing with us. He will be there for the next round as well, and look forward to racing and having him back as well. So, having not driven there before, I knew that testing was going to be really important. I absolutely need to have at least one day of testing. There was an open pit lane on Wednesday, and then 2 test sessions on Thursday and Friday. I opted only to test on the Thursday. Basically, it was the best value for money. It was the cheapest cost in terms of the track time that was available. And I thought if you test 2, sometimes 3 days, going into a weekend where you're racing more than once especially, it can probably be a bit too much. I found at Silverstone, for example, where I did several test days and then raced, I was just a bit burnt out in the race. So, again, whilst working on things like race fitness...
Race fitness?
What are you smoking at? Yeah.
What the fuck is race fitness?
Are you joking?
Race fitness?
Yeah. Like mental and physical fitness for racing. I thought this would be a better way to kind of make sure I was in the best place possible going into the race itself. But the testing went well. The way it was split was in the mornings we would work on the clockwise direction, so the conventional direction, and then the afternoon would be the reverse of that, so we'd be going anti-clockwise. So it was a good opportunity to get used to both layouts of the circuit. So I knew in testing that if there was one direction that I really needed to nail, it was going to be the clockwise direction, the conventional one. Of course, you want to be quick at both, but the weekend format meant that we would qualify clockwise. That would determine the grid position for the clockwise race on the Saturday, and then the finishing position for that first race would determine your start position for race 2 anti-clockwise on the Sunday. So, the impact of your qualifying and therefore your race on day 1 has a massive impact on day 2. So going into testing, I've been told by my race coach there are 3 things that you need to be quick at Knockhill. The first one is precision, and the other 2 are between your legs. So I knew as soon as I was in the car, first session out, I had to absolutely go for it. Having never driven there, wow, what an experience. It's a short lap, it's a minute essentially. It's a tight, compact, small circuit. Looks more like it's designed for bikes than for cars. And wow, it's like a mini roller coaster. It's so quick in terms of how fast it comes at you. It's corner after corner after corner, and each one requires 100% precision, maximum concentration at all points. The margin for error is so slim. If you overstep the track limits ever so slightly, you're in the gravel or you're on the grass, and that is an immediate precursor for being in the barrier. So I set off pounding around, lap times initially around the 1:02 mark. I was thinking, I don't know where I'm going to find much more time from. The lap record up until that point was 1 minute dead. Slowly, after each session, went back in, reviewed my footage, saw where I had opportunities to improve, looking at the data, the videos, and slowly chipped away. And towards the end of the morning sessions, my lap times were consistently around 59.8, 59.9, there or thereabouts. And that was in clean air. So again, Caterham's, the impact of the toe, the slipstream is massive. So I knew if I could be consistently in the 59s in clean air without a toe, I was in a really good position for the qualifying session on Saturday. So then we went to the afternoon session, the circuit direction reversed, so it's anti-clockwise, and wow, talk about throwing a cat amongst the pigeons. It changed everything so much more than I thought, and I've been watching people's onboards, trying to figure out how to drive the circuit. Wow, totally different. And I have to say, certainly the most fun layout on Knockhill, but probably one of the most fun driving experiences that I've had. Things like the chicane, even in our little academy cars, you're getting all four wheels off the ground. You feel like a stunt driver. So I'm going to say it rhymes with stunt. And as the sessions progressed, it dawned on me that was actually my stronger of the two layouts. I was consistently in, again, the 59.8s, 59.7s in clean air, and I felt really strong. When you're out on track with other cars about, certainly people that you're used to racing against, you get a bit of a gauge for how you think you're doing in terms of the strength of everyone else. And towards the end of the day, I started thinking, you know what, actually this anti-clockwise layout, I think this is where I have the biggest opportunity. Friday, had a day off, was off playing golf with my family, dinner in the evening, which was really nice, a good way to kind of get away from the racing and sometimes the pressure that I quite often place on myself. And it was just a nice way to compartmentalise, de-stress, and spend a bit of time with my family and friends. Friends! So Saturday, race day. Started off, of course, with qualifying, as we always do for the first race. And again, I felt the test session on Thursday gave me a lot of confidence. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't feeling super confident going out for this weekend. I got in the car, I just felt I knew exactly what I needed to do. I wasn't overthinking anything. I went out, not a lot playing in my mind, and just went out knowing that I was gonna, just let it come to me. Let's see how the car feels. Just let it all feel as natural as possible. I felt I was in a really good position on track. I'd created the right amount of space between people that were fast in front of me and knowing that I wouldn't get caught from people behind. And that gave me free license really to push as hard as I could. And I was consistently in the mid 59s, there's 59.7s, I think 59.6, consistently there or thereabouts as well. And after the 15 minutes, I came in, I felt strong. I felt that if that's not front row, then whoever's beat me, wow, amazing. Like I don't know what else I could have done out there really. And as I came into the pits off the last corner, I could see my family there, cheering away, fist bumping, and just going like that. And I came in, sure enough, checked TSL timings, and it was my first ever pole position. And it felt amazing. And it was a good result. I think it was 2.5 tenths quicker than P2. So I was absolutely elated. I felt confident, and it was great to see that I was able to deliver on the work that I'd been putting in. We had a little bit of a wait, as we always do. Race weekends are mainly waiting around between the qualifying session and the race session. Got the car set up, got ready, headed over to the assembly area, the usual pre-race routine, headphones on, in the zone, concentrating, thinking about what I need to think about in order to go out and do the best that I can. We head out to the grid, and it was quite a unique lap to the grid at Knockhill. Typically what would happen is you would come out of the pits, drive round to your grid position where you'd be gridded up by the marshals, and then you'd have a green flag lap, a formation lap. And that gives you an opportunity to check if, I don't know, if the conditions are different, try and get some heat in the tyres and in the brakes, do a practice start, things like that. We didn't have that at Knockhill. In fact, our formation lap, our green flag lap, was from the pits straight to the grid. You were gridded up and then it was time to race. So it meant things like starts, we didn't have an opportunity to practice, had to work really hard to get heat in the brakes, in the tyres. I think I even locked up on my formation lap trying to do that as well. And all to try and give myself the best possible chance to get a good start to the race. We were gridded up, and I was there on the front row next to Tom McEwen, of course, a rapid driver. Just waiting for the lights to come on. The 5-second board gets shown first, and then the lights come on, and then it's go time. And it's amazing, your mind is racing. Well, for me it is anyway. My mind is racing when I'm coming to the start line. I'm thinking of all the things that could go wrong. Trying to really concentrate, and then those lights come on, and as soon as they go out, nothing. Everything just becomes like robotic, self-conscious. I can't explain it, but for anyone that's raced, like, you probably have the same thing. It's an amazingly bizarre experience to go through. But the lights came on, and then they went off, and my usual starting procedure. And I was fortunate to get another good start. I had a good start at Anglesey, had a terrible one at Donington, but I think starts have been one of my strongest assets so far this year. Touch wood, I don't now jinx that going into the final race of the year. But I got a good start and enough of a lead coming into turn 1, Duffers Dip, to not necessarily have to worry about a huge amount of contact or any risk behind. And I knew that was something that was going to be important. This was a race that again had the potential for safety cars or red flags written all over it. I was fortunate to get through. There was a little bit of chaos and carnage behind us, as there often is in the academy, again, particularly a tight track like this. But amazingly, lots of people got going again, and we were able to continue without a safety car or a red flag, which, like I said, I thought was pretty much a given for this race, to be honest. I just pounded around, doing what I could, and Tom and Lionel and Duncan, I think, were battling away behind me between P2 and P4. And I knew that would give me an opportunity to try and create a bit of gap, break the toe, try and drive away, create enough of a gap that it would be difficult for them to catch me later on into the race. In qualifying, one thing that I had noticed when I watched my footage back was I was consistently too fast going into the first turn, which is a downhill right-hander. And that was compromising me all the way through turns 2, 3 and 4. So one thing I had told myself before getting in the car was, don't carry too much speed into turn 1. Play it at 90-95% of your capacity, leave enough there so that you don't create too much risk and go into the gravel, which is exactly what I had done in testing on the Thursday as well. Within a few laps, I had created, I think, a 3.5 second gap to second place, which was Tom. And I played it way too conservative. I look back at the footage between my qualifying and my race, and I was a different driver. I think I was often 7-8 miles an hour slower in each corner. So I knew I'd played it conservatively, a bit of risk management, and I'd overshot it. I'd gone way too far. And within 2 or 3 laps, Tom, who was pushing like hell, was right on me. And I knew straight away, the race has now changed. It's gone from me into qualifying mode to I now need to defend, and this is now a battle for the lead. Having had no race experience, defending, pushing, making passes is something that I've not really known how to do. I had to kind of just learn it as we go along. Tom was exceptionally fast. I knew I was going to have to defend super hard in order not to let him pass and retain the lead. And we had certainly the most exhilarating battle that I've had on track. I've been lucky enough to have some great races with Tom and with Matt especially, where we've been fighting tooth and nail. And this was definitely the most close racing that we've had. So there was a few points. We were absolutely wheel to wheel, like the definition of wheel to wheel. Super close racing. And again, one of the reasons I love racing with Tom and Matt is I know that they are always aware. They have that perception around them, and we're always mindful of each other when we're racing. We look to race, as clean and as fairly, but as hard as possible. After a couple of laps, Tom got past me, and then I overtook him back for the lead as well. And in the time that we'd been battling, P3 and P4 places had caught up with us. And again, that gave me an opportunity to pull away again, whilst Tom was then fighting to retain P2. And stupidly, I went back into my conservative mode. While I was battling with Tom, I went as hard as I could. It was 100%. And then I thought, okay, now I have another 3-second lead. Make sure you keep it on the black stuff. And then within a few more laps, that 3-second lead had again disappeared to nothing. Twice in one race, I threw away a multi-second substantial lead. When you have a lap that is 1 minute and you have a 3-second lead, it's actually more impressive to throw that away than it is to drive off. And I did it twice. So if nothing else, at least I'm consistent in the fact that I'm able to throw away leads. And I've done this, I think, every race so far. I've been fortunate enough to lead every race. For many of them, I've had a lead and I've thrown it away. And I did this again. So Tom and I, again, we had another great battle that lasted 2 laps, I think 2 or 3 laps. And then we saw the last lap board come out, and I knew as we were coming onto the back straight, Tom was right on me, thinking it all comes down to this final corner. I defended the inside line, parked it on the white line, parked it on the apex, defending as hard as I can, and was able to just about cross the line 0.2 of a second ahead of Tom for my second ever Caterham Academy race win. Now, my first race win, I didn't know that I'd won. I didn't know that I'd taken the checkered flag, which again was really poor by me. This one, I saw the checkered flag. I saw it in the distance. I knew it was there. And the feeling coming across the line, honestly, was amazing. It felt like a proper race win because I knew it was there. It felt like I'd fought with Tom to retain the lead. And I was just super proud, to be honest. I'd put it on pole position, I'd got the race win. I was absolutely ecstatic. Came into Parc Fermé, and I was first. Tom was second. Third was Duncan, and fourth was Lionel. And in fact, it was great to see Duncan get his first podium. Well deserved. He's a very fast driver. And a mate like Lionel in P4, who had been there all the way as well, he was third, I think, up until the last corner on the last lap. Lionel was, again, I don't know what he'd been eating for breakfast all week. What an incredible drive. The guy was so fast. And I think up until this point, I can't remember exactly, so apologies if I get it wrong, Lionel. I think P8 might have been his best position, and he was in a brand new league. It was like Lionel V2. He was amazing. All through testing, qualifying, racing, amazing to see how much he had progressed. And to be honest, this was a point in the weekend that I actually struggled with a bit. So I got out of the car, elated at my first win, my second win. And the first thing I wanted to do was go and congratulate the other drivers, particularly Tom, who had driven amazingly that whole race and made it so difficult for me to be able to win. And I don't want to go into too many details, but Tom was upset with how I'd driven. Felt that I hadn't driven as cleanly or as fairly as as we should be. And it really affected me. I love racing. I'm so glad that I have the opportunity and the privilege to be able to race. But I would rather come last than win by taking advantage of someone or racing unfairly. Honestly, I would rather be stone dead last than win at other people's expense. And particularly when it's someone who I will call a friend. Tom is an amazing guy. He's an incredibly talented driver and just a lovely bloke. And it really upset me that I felt that I'd upset him, that I might have put him or his car at risk. And in fairness, there was a couple of bits of contact that we had in the race, and again, contact under no circumstances should happen. And of course, I have a role to play in that, and need to learn from that. But it really upset me. Again, I would never want to win. I would never want to win like that. That's not who I am. It's certainly not the type of driver that I want to be. So it meant the win, the podium celebrations were a little bit dampened, I think. And then you couldn't make it up. Tom did a full Lando Norris style celebration. Smashed his champagne bottle. Normally, to try and fizz it up. Sorry, I say champagne. Carver, I don't know what it is. Bounced it on the floor, and normally it would work. And it would normally fizz it up, and he'd be able to spray the champagne. And this bottle just shattered. It was like it was sugar glass, just shattered into a million pieces. Now, of course, we all thought this was very funny, but it very quickly turned out that it wasn't. Tom had cut his hand really, really severely. Of course, he needed medical attention, and he later on had to go to the hospital as well. But of course, that put a dampener on it. Worried about his health, his hand. Of course, when for lots of things you didn't need your hands, but certainly in racing as well. Was he going to be able to race the next day? That wasn't something that we knew at the time. After the race, spent a bit of time sorting out the car, packing things up ready for the next day. Went and had a celebratory Foster's, which is the beer they served in Knockhill. Wasn't expecting it to be Foster's that they had there. And then I had a call from Tom, who very unfortunately had to go to the hospital to have his hand checked. He was at a minor injuries clinic having it all checked over to make sure that he didn't have anything seriously wrong with it. And he told me on the phone that he'd lodged a protest against myself for my driving, which was something that the clerks of the course, I think the clerks were going to review. So we were chatting away on the phone, and we had a great conversation. And firstly, I have so much respect and admiration for doing that. I'm one of those people that deals best with direct feedback, and the fact that Tom called me to tell me, I can't really articulate how much I respected that. And we had a really good conversation, talking about why he was doing it, and ultimately, I was glad that he did, because we were both going to learn, right? That's the bottom line, is we were going to learn. Had I overstepped the mark, which of course I've really hoped that I hadn't. If I had, how do I learn from that? How do I make sure that I don't do that anymore? Because again, I would rather be last than be that type of driver. So it was an opportunity for us both to learn. What can we do? If we're going to race each other, we want to race hard, we want to race fair. What's the rules of engagement? Where are the lines? How do we ensure that we stay within that threshold when we race each other? But it meant, I think it was 8 o'clock or so at this point in the evening, so it meant we weren't going to hear back until the morning. And of course, the protest, depending on the results, that can change the positions, it can result in penalties, so on and so forth. So again, I didn't feel like I'd won until certainly the dust was settled on that at least. Sunday morning, got to the paddock. Tom was there with his very heavily bandaged hand, and fortunately he'd been given the all clear to race by race control and by the medical centre there. Amazing that he was able to do so, because his hand must have been in extreme amounts of pain. And then we had a chat, and he mentioned about the conversation with the clerks about the protest that he'd lodged. And they deemed that there was a little bit in there, but there wasn't necessarily enough for it to actually result in anything. So we had a good conversation again. We were able to draw a line under it, and ultimately shake hands, have a hug. The guy is an absolutely brilliant bloke, a great driver, and that for me was one of the highlights of the weekend, was that we were able to learn from that experience, and no harm done, so to speak. Certainly would never wish for any bad blood with him. He's an absolutely top guy. So with almost a line drawn under Saturday, it meant, okay, time to focus again. Monday morning we had the reverse familiarisation session, so we didn't have a qualifying session because we had the race result from Saturday. But in order to race on a circuit configuration, you have to have done at least 3 laps of that layout. So we all were sent out in different sessions to go and do at least 3 laps. Try to use it as a little bit of a practice session to make sure I was happy with how the car was set up, see if the conditions had changed, so on and so forth. Came in from that session, again, feeling good, feeling like I was in the right place to be able to race. In the afternoon, we then got ready to race. Now again, different direction. And for one of the first times in ages, we were able to watch the green group, so the other academy grid, race at the same time. We were able to watch from the pit wall whilst all our cars were in assembly. And it was great, it was thrilling to watch those guys. And you really actually have an appreciation when you're that close to how fast the cars were going. But it meant for me that I'd almost taken myself away from my normal pre-race routine. I then suddenly felt a little bit flustered as I got in the car because I hadn't had the time to, essentially switch my mind off and get myself in the position I like to be in to race. But try not to dwell on it. Again, we had a formation lap to the grid. We didn't have a separate lap. And we got there, lined up, ready to go. And again, it was Tom alongside me, Duncan, Lionel, and then Ryan behind him as well. The 5-second ball comes out, the lights come on, and then they go, and then it's time to race again. Now, I had a good start on the Saturday. On the Sunday, I had an average start. Maybe a 4 out of 7 was how I would scale the start. I hadn't accounted for the fact that it was slightly downhill, and that meant when I went through my normal start setup, I generated a lot of wheel spin, which meant I just sat there, wheel spinning, not really moving forward. I was still able to get away, but Mr. Ryan Wilby, who was in 5th place, launched like he was in a slingshot, came through like an absolute rocket ship at the start as well. So straight away, I knew I was going to have my work cut out. Now, on the Saturday's race, I'd driven too conservative in lots of places, and I told myself, that can't be the case. And I'd even told my girlfriend that when I go out to race, tell me, don't be a pussy. And that was the last text that she sent me before I went out to race. And I thought, yep, not going to be a pussy. I'm going to go out, I'm going to go hell for leather? Hell to leather? What's the expression? Anyway, I'm going to drive really fast. And I felt so confident. I felt like, honestly, I was the quickest guy out there by 0.3 of a second on this layout. I felt like this was my race to win. So on the first lap, we come to turn 2, Clark's, and I straight away was braking at where I'd been braking in testing. And I had cold tyres, cold brakes, because of course we haven't really been driving, we've just done the formation lap. And immediately I made a mistake, because I just went in way too fast for what the car was ready for at that point. And Ryan, who hadn't made a mistake, came flying past me, took the lead going into the chicane, and then we sat behind him, going into the rest of the lap. We then battled through turn 1 and turn 2, so the hairpin and then into Clark's again. I felt I had the run on him going into turn 2, and I'd gone too far the other way. So lap 1, I'd left the braking zone for Clark's way too late. Lap 2, and I was on the inside of Ryan. I then went back to what I was doing on Saturday. I braked too early, and I just let Ryan take the racing line and zoom off ahead of me. That meant not only had I not taken the lead, I was also compromised. I was in a poor position with a poor line. It was going to compromise me for the rest of the lap. We get through to the chicane. I make a mistake there as well because I'm out of position. And then we come into what would be essentially one of the final corners. And I start turning in. I braked at my normal zone, same speed I would be normally. And then I'm hit on the rear left of my car. And my car spins around and it's hit again. I'm then in the gravel, my car's damaged, and that's my race done. It had lasted less than 2 minutes. Didn't even make it through lap 2. And my race was finished. Now, it's worth noting that motorsport, any form of racing, it's an occupational hazard. Having crashes, it comes with the territory. You have to accept that. I don't know how to articulate what I'm trying to say. I felt at the time the incident happened, something was amiss. It didn't feel like a racing incident. And I sat there in the gravel, I tried to get it in reverse, tried to get it in second gear, tried to get it out, but I was too deep in the gravel. That was me done. And I didn't know the car was damaged until it was pulled out. So even if I got it out of the gravel, the race was never done for me anyway. And I sat there, I just felt this giant wave of like crushing disappointment. The person who had hit me was able to get going, and then the race was put under the safety car. I was pulled into the middle of the circuit by, again, the amazing marshals and the rescue team able to help me, who we couldn't race without, and thank you so much for everything that those guys do. And then I was just kind of left in the middle of the racetrack for the remainder of the race, and suddenly 18 minutes feels like an eternity. I was also mindful that I wasn't able to contact my family. The coverage for the live stream didn't show what happened in the incident, it just showed my car in the gravel basically. So at that point I was worrying, my family, bless them, they're chronic worriers, they're going to think something's wrong, so I wanted to be able to let them know that I was absolutely okay. But I stood there watching the race, of course, with massive disappointment, watching the rest of the cars pound by, and it was a great race to watch. For those that were able to continue. You had Tom at the front, exceptional driving as always. Lionel, who was driving like a lion that weekend, keeping him honest the whole way, just no let up. Tom couldn't afford to make a mistake. And then you had Ryan and Ed behind, again fighting all the way. It's amazing actually getting to see all these different on-track battles that you don't normally get to see, of course, whilst you're racing. Was there watching, saw them come across the line, and at that point it was time for me to head back. My lovely little car was lifted by a high ab onto the recovery truck. I jumped in the recovery truck with the guys who spoke such thick Scottish I could barely understand a word what they were saying, but they were lovely guys, and they took me back to the paddock. And a few things that I knew I had to do. The first one is I cannot show any anger because I haven't seen the footage. It's really easy for racing drivers to just immediately partition blame onto other people. I knew that I could have a part to play in this incident, and I need to review what happened before I force any opinions. And the second thing is, I'm not the only person who races. Now there's other people out there who are racing, and it was amazing to see. Tom got a win, his first win, I think it was in Snetterton. He drove amazingly, thoroughly deserved. Lionel, P2, again, the drive of his life this weekend, absolutely amazing to see him do so well. And then Ed, who ended up third because Ryan got a penalty. So Ed with his first podium. Again, Ed is a great friend of mine, really lovely bloke. Has had some tough times this year with a really nasty accident that was through no fault of his own really back at Silverstone. Absolutely amazing to see those people get the podiums, get the trophies they deserve, and I was honestly elated, like absolutely elated. I just went over to each of them, gave them massive hugs, congratulations, and I was so happy for them. Of course I would be lying if I said I wasn't disappointed for myself. Racing is, I'm extremely fortunate to have the opportunity to race. But I kind of race on a shoestring budget. Like if I have a big accident, sadly the reality is that would be my racing done. And I race knowing that, I race with that risk reward. That's what I just have to live with. And I felt two things. I felt the opportunity for me to win the championship had just been snatched away from me. If I had won, or even if I'd come in the top 3 for that second race, I had a really good chance going into the final round. And like I said, that felt like this had the potential to be my strongest race of the year. I really felt I was going to win. And the second part was, it could potentially have snatched away my chance to continue racing. At this point, I didn't know the damage to the car. If it had been something like a chassis, that would be me done, And I watched the footage back, and for me, it's absolutely plain as day that it is a pure error by the other driver. That's all it is. It is someone has hit straight into me. It wasn't side by side, it was a lunge from miles back, straight into the side of me. It's reckless, it's dangerous, it's needless, and the world of motorsport has no liability. I'm the one who has to foot that bill. I'm the one that has to pay for the repairs. And for what? I felt I had no part to play in that. And it was at that point that I decided to go and lodge a protest. because I felt it was the right thing to do. You know, of course I was agreed, but also there needs to be consequences. There needs to be learning involved. Again, you know, Tom and I, the discussion that we had around the protest, that, you know, we were both positive about that discussion because there was going to be a learning involved, and I felt the same had to be applied here. Long story short, I didn't proceed with the protest because the clerks had actually taken judicial action themselves. They had actually issued the driver with penalty points and disqualified them from the race because they believed that they had caused a collision with me. So I felt there was no need to go on. And plus, you've got to pay for a protest, so it was a little bit of a saving that I knew I was going to have to put towards repair bills, most likely. We pack up, and then to make for an added laugh, my trailer decides to just not work. The cable, for whatever reason, the electrical cable had just stopped working. Now, that is a real problem because that's the only way that you get lights on the trailer, particularly things like brake lights that are, of course, illegal and exceptionally dangerous to drive without. My brother-in-law Steve and another guy called Simon were just absolute legends. They slaved away for like 2 hours, I think, fixing the trailer, coming up with the ultimate bodge so that we were able to drive home. Because honestly, at this point, I was just going to set it on fire. I was just going to leave the trailer there. I was just done. I was just absolutely fuming. I was so underwhelmed at this point. Those two legends kept pushing away, but kept plying them with beer, and amazing that they were able to get us on the road. And honestly, you know, that day, they were absolute lifesavers that day. Bills, etc. aside, it was a great weekend. Honestly, until you're involved in a racing community, it's hard to articulate it, but it is exactly that. It is a real community spirit. There are some amazing people there that you get to meet along the way. Not only the people that you share on-track experiences with, but the off-track experiences, their friends, their family. It was certainly the most fun we've had at a race weekend. And again, that sense of community, like a tight-knit community, was just brilliant. So again, looking forward to hopefully being able to race again with some of those people. We have one more round, Silverstone International, on Saturday the 15th of October. It is, I mean, hopefully from Caterham's point of view, it's one of the best stories they would have had. The championship could be won by Matt Larby, Tom McEwen, or myself. There are several permutations of results that could significantly change the outcome. The odds are heavily in the favour of Tom. His worst result is 3rd position. And the results that we use, it works on a dropped score basis. You drop your 2 worst scores. Matt unfortunately wasn't able to join us for the races in Knockhill, so he drops both of those results. I had my 8th place at Silverstone, and of course I did not finish at Knockhill as well. So those are my 2 worst results lost. That puts Tom in a really strong position because he's got a great host of results. So the odds are with Tom, and then with Matt, and then myself, and very much the underdog going into this final race of the year. For me to win the championship, I need to win, and I need to have the fastest lap. Even if I win, I will tie on points with Tom. Now, if that happens in a tie-break situation, there are 3 ways it's decided. The first is they look at the number of wins that you have. We could easily be tied for that. They then look at the number of second places that you have. We could be tied for that. So third, they then look at your total results. And again, that's where Tom has a really big advantage. So it's going to be tough. You know, it's going to be tough. It's not impossible. It's definitely not impossible. I have 1 fastest lap to my name so far this season. So it might be doable. So stay tuned for the final episode. And Silverstone International, I am coming for you. Thank you for watching. Bye. As always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your support. And I'll see you at the final episode on the other side.